Welcome along to this week's edition of the Betting Oracle with me, Jim Dillahunt, and Harry Finlay is with me as ever. We've got lots to get through as ever this week, lots of sports betting chat, and we're going to be starting with horse racing because there's so much happening in the sport over the next few weeks. It's Irish Grand National weekend next weekend. We're going to be joined on the programme by Irish racing expert Gary O'Brien. And then the following weekend, it's the Grand National at Aintree when we'll be joined in the studio by a legendary Grand National winning jockey, Davy Russell. There's some fantastic racing to come over the next few weeks. Of course, we have the Scottish Grand National at Ayr coming up after that. We'll be covering that as well. But lots to get through today. This weekend, there's a lot of racing. There's plenty of football as well, despite the fact it's an international break. And of course, when we come back from that international break, the big title races in England and Scotland will resume. And so much to get through in those cases as well. So plenty to talk about. We're going to start with racing this weekend, Harry. It's the first leg of what used to be called the Spring Double. I don't think anybody refers to the Spring Double anymore. Of course, it was the Lincoln at Doncaster and the Grand National at Aintree. Was it ever a thing for you?
The Spring Double wasn't, but the Lincoln, I first fell in love with horse race, flat racing as a teenager, 16, 17. I was blessed because even then you knew that it was Lester Piggott, Willie Carson and Pat Edry, and even the backup jockeys, Bruce Raymond, who recently passed away. The jockeys and the racing was so strong, and I live near Newbury, so there was always the Greenham and the early season stuff, and the Lincoln was the handicap. But once, so my first couple of years on the flat, I was quite into the Lincoln, as everyone was talking about it in Newbury and stuff like that. But once I realised it was a handicap, I soon, and it was 7-1 the field. I did bet Yamadori when I was about 17, but no, for me, the Lincoln wouldn't be relevant much to me nowadays, certainly.
And we're dealing with so many variables in the Lincoln. I mean, we know the runners right at this point in time as we're speaking to you, but we don't know the draw yet. We don't know exactly what the ground's going to be. So it's always interesting. Early races on the Doncaster card, you get an idea of what the draw might be like and what the preference might be, stand side, far rail, whatever. So we won't really know that till Saturday. But there's one or two interesting runners in this Lincoln handicap, and we're going to be talking about the big races at Maidan and Dubai this weekend in just a second as well. But let's look at that Lincoln first. The top two in the betting at the moment going into this weekend are Labotte, which is trained by Harry Eustace, and also a Willie Haggas runner, which is called Eternal Force. Now, Willie has won this race 5 times in the past, going way back to 1992. I think it was his first time to win it, and he's won it 4 times since then. So he's looking for his 6th Lincoln handicap win. I'm going to tip the horse that he is going to saddle in the big race on Saturday. But Harry, you've had a word for Labotte.
Well, Glenn was just mentioning what a big eye catcher it was at Wolves, and that was he thinks it could be a group horse in a handicap, which is what nowadays I think it's half what you're looking for, really. Was that the same horse that you mentioned about going wide? And
Yeah, Labotte. I saw that race at Wolverhampton. Jamie Spencer, who will ride it on Saturday, was in the saddle at Wolverhampton, and he just pulled very, very wide coming into the home straight. I think the stewards had a look at it, but decided everything was okay. But what happened was he avoided a £5 winner's penalty for Saturday. So he pays your money and you take your pick. Would it have won that race, or but he's avoided the penalties. Now the 72 favourite, maybe 4-1 in some places.
Yeah, it looks like being 4-1 and 9-2 the horse. I think don't Glenn want too much rain for Labotte, but if there isn't too much rain, on the back of what you've said as well, I think I might have a little bit of 4-1.
Yeah, and just backing up what Harry said there, Labotte was also in the listed race on the card, but of course they're going for the Lincoln. So clearly, despite being quite well up the weights on Saturday, they think it's very well handicapped, and you pays your money and takes your pick as to whether it would have won at Wolverhampton, but he didn't. He's avoided the £5 penalty, and a lot of people think that Labotte is very well in. I think Eternal Force is a real good chance for William Haggas and Kieran Fallon, the combination that won the race last year with Godwin's son. Tom Marquand is obviously Willie Haggas's main jockey, but he's off to ride in Australia during the month of April. So Kieran Fallon fills in. Kieran's the second jockey. He rides Eternal Force. This horse it won a couple of handicaps last season. He won those handicaps at Haydock, I think was one of them. And he's gone up quite a little bit in the weights, but when Willie Haggas won this race last year with Godwin's son, I think it won off 94. This one goes off 96. So I think even just by what I've said in terms of Haggas having won this race 5 times, Harry, they know what they're doing.
Oh yeah, he's the master, and that's what go back to what we said about it. You know, you do. I do think that there are horses lined out now with these races where you have to be really special to win what was a wide open handicap.
Yeah,
not so long ago.
And this horse, the Haggas horse, it went to Hamilton last year, finished second in a maiden, and they decided to gild it after that, and it hasn't looked back. So they certainly know what they're doing. We've established that. They certainly think it's well handicapped. We've established that. We've put up Labotte and we've put up Eternal Force. It may look boring when you look at the betting. It's 4-1, 9-2, but we do think that those two horses are a standout, and we'll be disappointed if we don't get big runs for our money. I'm going to mention another horse here in relation to the Lincoln. It's a horse called Harvey, which is trained by Ian Williams. Now, this was in an apprentice race on Sunday at Doncaster, but they were in the Lincoln, so they've been declared, and that means they're in the consolation race. They're not in the main Lincoln, they're in the consolation race, and they think that's got a bit of a chance. It's a horse that's run twice on the all-weather at Kempton, quite good in group races in France last year, a couple of years ago. So clearly they think that's well handicapped. So maybe each way Harvey in the spring consolation mile. But the other big racing this weekend is, of course, in Maidan in Dubai. It's going ahead despite the various troubles over there. And you've had a word with your contacts, Harry, and 3 horses that really are expected this weekend.
Well, I thought for the punters, the 3 hot pots. It was just checking what then thought the three hot pots and ombudsman around the 4. I'm presuming that we're guessing the market would be about 4 to 6 ombudsmen, and at that price we were probably just going to stay out unless there was a little bit of rain. But apparently there has been a little bit of rain this morning, and with him laid out for this has been the sole target for the horse, and he's now got what looks like perfect ground. That would be a wages bet for us at that price.
So when you say a wages bet, what do you mean by that?
Small bet.
Yeah.
You know, it's hard to get much value. I think that I've been known all my life as being a bit as odds-on punter and betting the hot favourites, but with the horses, I'll just do what Glenn tells me, and quite rightly, he thinks that there's less and less value in the favourites, and there is in all markets, and in most sporting markets, because invariably, you know, things are the right price, and you know, with the horses, it's a tough betting the odds on is very tough these days. So most of the skinny ones, of the skinny ones are only wages bets now. But when there's a nap, you know, it's good fun. But there aren't too many of them.
So the ones we're looking at then, Forever Young, which goes for the World Cup itself, it's round about 4 to 7, Harry?
Yeah, I think that'll be 4 to 6 as well. Won it last year, won around the world, looks like a rocket. I'm trying to, I'll get a bollocking if I bet him, and Ben hasn't bet him, but he's very close to betting it, so that's nearly a bet. And
Ombudsman you mentioned, and the Dubai Turf.
Yeah.
Round about 1 to 2, or do you think it better?
No, I think that'll be, I think the trading price hopefully will be 4 to 8 to 13, mate. 8 to 13 will be my cut-off point for a wages bet, I suppose.
And the Sheema Classic, we all know Calandagan's going for that. Very popular horse, proven all over the world now, so we're going for that as well.
Well, it's one of the last 3. Now, before, it was an expensive horse for us when it kept coming second and not quite getting there, but now it's got its head in front, and it's just, with the run it comes with, it's great. It's great to watch. Funnily enough, I noticed the last run when it won in Tokyo, it come with another horse, and it 20 yards before the line, it's genuinely Ichi Peachy, and on the inside was a loose horse who was just in front of Calandagan. So it may be without the loose horse, maybe it'd be a slightly bigger price. And I'm saying that because with that past record, Calandagan's not a horse you'd want to be betting 4 on about.
Yeah,
but he looks like being 4 to 9, maybe 2 on, and at that I'd have to be a punter. That run that he comes with is, you know, I don't think that surface and track will be that straight. I think they'll be right up his street.
So if the viewers are watching Saturday night, we're talking about the short price treble here.
Yeah, possibly. Yeah,
Forever Young, Ombudsman, and Calandagan.
Yeah, if any firm went top prices or a boost on those 3 favourites, that's what some of the shops and that they do, boost prices when maybe wherever it comes to, they'll go a full 1.5 over, and I'd definitely be having a bit of that treble if there was any overs flying about.
Very interesting, very interesting. Just before we come into the studio to talk to you guys, we heard that Ryan Moore is not going to Dubai this weekend. He's actually staying in the British Isles. He's going to be in Ireland. He's going to be at the Curragh. to ride a horse called Albert Einstein. That's in the Gladness Stakes, which is a 2,000 guineas trial over there. It's already, I think, 72 favourite for the Newmarket 2,000 guineas, Harry. Hugely significant, I think, that Ryan Moore stays here to ride that on Saturday.
Yeah, well, we'll see. It's mixed reports, obviously, you get from time to time, but some of the balls are saying we'll find out when they run. Often in recent years they've been a bit short of a run, haven't they, for these classics?
Yeah.
I mean, what a trainer! They get beat in the Guineas, they get lapped in the Guineas, and they get lapped in the Guineas, and they still end up favourite to win the Derby. I mean, fair play. I mean, they are the governors of that, you know.
Well, it's interesting because sometimes they just do go straight to the Guineas, whether they win or lose. But they think that this Albert Einstein, because he's been off a while, needs the run.
Yeah, well,
and they want Moore on.
The way they've ran, the way they've run in the Guineas in the last few years, you'd think they're just using it as a blowout. More, not, you know, and the way they've improved, the amount they've improved for the second run, not just the trip, it's been, you know, in previous generations or decades, it's never been a tendency like that before.
Let me ask you about the value here, because before not Ryan Moore, before Aidan O'Brien had his press day about 10 days ago, this Albert Einstein was 6-1 for the Guineas. So Aidan then has all the press over to Ireland. He talks to all these riders and he points out Albert Einstein and he says this is the fastest horse in the yard, and he's suddenly 7-2. So the value's gone.
Well, if it's gone from 6 to 7-2, it's not just what he said. There's proper. They've put the money down, and you know, I didn't even realise how short it got. But if you know, obviously there's no negatives in all forms of gambling, in all forms of betting. Money talks.
Yeah.
You know, and whatever it is, with non-runners or with how they've worked or any problems, especially nowadays when someone's always watching something, and you know, the markets will be right all the time, really.
Would you be worried though if he comes out and maybe not flops, but maybe only finishes second or third?
Well, I wouldn't be worried, but I haven't bet him. So as a punter, primarily, I'm just worried about what I'm betting on. So I would, you know, I like seeing the great horses, and I like to watch the good horses, the Rockets. So I definitely prefer him to win, but without any financial involvement, it's always a bit secondary, you know. Really.
We hope he's as good as Aidan O'Brien is talking him up to be. So that's Albert Einstein running in that Guineas trial at the Curragh on Saturday. Just going back to the World Cup, I mean, remembering back to, was it 2000, Harry, when the great Dubai Millennium won the race over there?
Oh, that was...
You were there, weren't you?
Yeah. Were you there at Ascot? What you told me at Ascot?
Yeah, I'll tell you about that.
About the famous bell. I mean, no, of all the races I've ever watched, that it was arguably the best atmosphere I've ever seen watching a horse win. But without question, it was the most unique, because it's a mile and a half race round a bend.
Yeah.
And literally, after 2 furlongs, on the far side straight, after 2 furlongs, he was 3 in front, settled like a dream. He looked like he was the Black Beauty. He was Black Beauty. He was
lovely.
He was the Lloyd's advert.
Looking horse.
He was the Lloyd's advert horse of all time, apart from being a rocket. And literally everyone knew he'd won. The grooms, the people in the boxes, people on the ground, the peanut sellers, the smells, the aroma, and everyone just started doing a rhythmical clap. That was before the horse got out of the far side. So you can imagine the crescendo as the horse came out the home straight. And never, I mean, I've owned Gold Cup winners and all that lot. It's been brilliant and exciting, but never has the hairs on the back of my neck never stood up that much on a race course as when Dubai Millennium, with about 150 yards to go. How much Sheikh Mohammed enjoyed it, God only knows. But I know that when he died, it was the worst thing that's ever happened in his life.
Yeah, it was a very similar story at Ascot, Royal Ascot, when he ran in the Prince of Wales Stakes, and I was right up the back of the old stand. And when he came round the bend, they rang the old bell at Ascot to say they were coming round the bend, and Dubai Millennium just went to the front and just pulled further and further clear, and everybody was standing up applauding him all the way up the straight, and you knew that day you were seeing a great horse, and he went on to prove it.
Yeah, well, I wasn't there that day.
Yeah.
And it's funny, people said what a great atmosphere it was, but no one's explained exactly how that was. I used to love that bell. You know, we're talking about the every casting. I know, it's the best ever. When you go with the bell, it's the best bell. Apart from the one at Hackney Wick you used to go when the hair was running. That's the best bell. Yeah. You can get that one on YouTube. But No, I used to love Ascot. I preferred the old stand as well, and that's what I was doing a lot of my racing.
Yeah.
So no, I'm annoyed I missed that race for Dubai Millennium.
Yeah, they used to have a lot of bells and paddocks when horses were getting mounted, but some of the 2-year-olds were freaking out, and I think most of the tracks have got rid of their bells in the paddock when the jockeys are getting mounted. But before we leave the racing, I want to just mention the Grand National coming up in a couple of weeks. I've already told you that Davy Russell is going to be here with us in the studio. News this week that Mark Walsh, who is still the number one jockey for JP McManus, obviously is going to be replaced by Harry Cobden at the end of this season. But Mark Walsh, it's been announced that he is going to ride Jaguar, which is one of, I think, 6 JP horses in the Grand National at the moment. So Mark Walsh has committed himself quite a long way out to Jaguar, and that means there's going to be mounts to be had on Oscar's brother, which will probably be Danny King, trainer Connor King's brother, and also Spillane Tower. That could be an interesting one. Didn't run in the Gold Cup, but was down to be ridden by Harry Cobden. Harry is going to be available. He won't be riding for Paul Nicholls in the Grand National, so a possibility of him riding Spillane Tower. But a couple of weeks to go, Harry, but the build-up started and people starting to get interested in a race which isn't what it used to be. We have to admit that straight up front. It's not what it used to be. The fences are much smaller. It's a different race from 20 years ago, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And totally different, really. I used to like the Fox Hunters as well over the fences.
Yeah.
But no, it's not what it was with the size of the fences. But you can understand why JP McManus is his favourite. I think he prefers to win the Grand National than the Gold Cup.
Yeah.
Which Paul Barber certainly wouldn't have agreed with. But we had big fella thanks in the Grand National.
Yeah.
And to me, the Grand National compared with the Gold Cup, if you'd have said in advance as an owner, but there is something pretty exciting about the Grand National. There is.
Do you think it's still there?
Not as much, no. But you know, I suppose with big fella thanks, he was on the cusp of the bigger fences, and now what is more or less an ordinary handicap, really, with the size of the fences. But I do think it does have a special. I think the way it's been built into the fabric of society, really. When I remember being at football matches at 10, 11-year-old thinking, why were people listening to a horse race on the radio and thinking they were mad? And so, you know, I can understand it from that point of view, and it is a unique. It has got a unique atmosphere to it, as the whole Aintree card has. But no, it certainly wouldn't have been, even in the A day, it wouldn't have been a race that would have been as a top priority to win.
Yeah, there was an article in the Racing Post this week. Maddie Playle wrote the article saying that the Grand National wasn't quite what it was. And Maddie's quite young, actually, a lot younger than us two sitting here. And she was saying it's not what it used to be. The last time I actually walked round the track was 1986. That's the last time I bothered to walk round the track. And the fences even then were still huge.
Yeah.
But they're not huge anymore. It's just a park course. And they put the spruce on the top just to make it look like the Grand National, but they're not very big anymore. They really aren't. No,
that's I've got to agree with that. I've got to agree with that article really as well. You know, so but it is what it is, really.
It is what it is. We just have to get on with it. It'll still get huge attention, terrestrial TV coverage, and everybody will get very excited, have their quid on. So, but we will be looking into the Grand National in quite some detail in a couple of weeks with Davy Russell here in the studio. And of course, it's the Irish Grand National next weekend, and we'll be speaking to Gary O'Brien ahead of that with all the lowdown going into the big race at Fairyhouse on Easter Monday. Can't believe it's nearly Easter already. But of course, football this weekend, it's an international break, various qualifiers going on and various friendlies, teams warming up for the World Cup. So a little bit of break, Harry, from the serious business of winning championships and the ones we're going to talk about in England and Scotland. But of course, last week we'd previewed the League Cup final, and Manchester City went and beat Arsenal, put a spoke in the wheels.
Yeah, deservedly so. They were just getting right on top before they scored, and deservedly scored. But I don't think it will have much difference in the league. It did push the price out a touch. Yeah, they went from sort of 9 on to 7 on the back of that defeat. Can
you still get 7 on?
Yeah, you can still get. That's the sort of trading price. 7 on and 7 to 1 against. So, but looking at the fixtures, it does, and the points, the price looks about right.
Yeah, and because of the international weekend, and also next weekend it's FA Cup. That means the Premier League in England isn't back till the following weekend. And on that weekend, on the Saturday, Arsenal, who of course are nicely clear at the moment, they're at home to Bournemouth. And City on the Sunday will be playing catch up again. And it's hardly an easy one, Harry. They have to go to Chelsea.
Yeah, Chelsea, they're not in the best of form, no. I think the Premier League is very tough at the moment.
Yeah.
I don't think punters are getting the best of it in the Premier League at the moment, and especially in the last few weeks.
In what sense? In what sense?
Well, if they're on the overs, they'll be getting the dough. But there's been a lot of, you know, shock results, I'd say, and
Yeah.
teams that have been in front and well on top and not held on. And I just don't, you know, I think the punters are. I think you have a feel for any market, and you feel what punters are betting and doing. And I think that with regards to the Premier League, I think it's been a tough season for punters.
With that outstanding,
It might just be me.
It might just be you. It might just be you. It might be me.
I might just be just bloody useless.
But with that outstanding game in hand, which they have at home to Arsenal, do you give Manchester City any chance?
Yeah, that's 7 on. They get beat all the time. So yeah, of course it can happen. But you know, the results, the way the points are, it's going to take two big sort of two twist results really.
I did see it was Mikel Arteta's birthday this week, and Ryanair, which has got quite a naughty Twitter account or X account, they posted a picture of Mikel Arteta, and they said, finally celebrating something, so having a little bit of a pop at Arsenal there, the Ryanair Twitter account. So that was Mikel Arteta and Arsenal in Scotland. I want to mention relegation, because Burnley and Wolves, as we discussed last week, have gone. They've gone. And then the relegation betting, Harry, it's changed a little bit. West Ham now favourites to go down roughly 5-4. Spurs 9-5. Forest 13-2. Are the bookies getting that right?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's just a massive. Just quickly go back to the Arsenal thing, because I've preferred Arsenal throughout, really, on the market, but on the math with who's going to win the Premier League. But I just feel that the one thing that's always stopped me up betting Arsenal, I haven't bet them. I've bet them absolutely tiny. The only thing that stopped me betting is the fact that you know, they haven't done it for a long, long time, and effectively these guys haven't done it, and City have, and Pep has, and that's the one thing that's you know, that to me makes the market right and takes any value that Arsenal has. You know, you'd only be kicking yourself big time if it did go wrong.
But would that historic thing have any bearing on it?
No, I don't believe in this.
This is a new group of Arsenal players.
I know, but I understand that, but it's still, you know, some of them have been, you know, there were a couple of, you know, I just think it's always nice to have it on the board a little bit, not as much as a lot of the old guys do.
Yeah.
But to me, that's the one thing that's just swayed me from not being. And you know what, nowadays the scrutiny on you, if it does start going tits up, the scrutiny on, you know, it's going to be like never before.
It really is,
like never before. So that's always got to be part of the market. In Scotland, you got the same thing with Hearts, but you got the lizard in your corner, so that's a big help.
Well, I'm going to come to that, but I want to talk about Spurs, because in North London you've got Arsenal going for the title, and you've got Tottenham Hotspur trying to avoid relegation. And just when you thought they were back, they've gone and blown it again.
Well, the thing is about that game, the worrying thing for me is that I got talked into backing Spurs, and the way they started, I ended up having a bit on myself.
Yeah.
And I think after half an hour, they were the same price or even shorter than they were at the start of the match.
Yeah.
So you can't ask for more than that. Suddenly, obviously, we all had a terrible time to give away a goal. But even though you know they dominated the first 35 minutes and they're just going to go down, I didn't fancy betting Spurs at 1-0 down at half time.
Yeah.
In that, you know, and that's what's against them. And look how it's ended up. And you know, they fell away on the stats as well. So that's a real bad one. And it makes Forest, like you say, probably a 7-1 chance to go down. So you're looking at a buckle between the two London clubs. And, you know, like West Ham have been probably involved in more relegation battles than Spurs have in the last few years. And, you know, I wouldn't be backing Spurs to stay up any time now.
And of course, speculation continues as to whether they will change the manager or stroke interim manager in the meantime. But I mean, the poor lad in charge, he suffered a family bereavement, and he's dealing with that. And yet there's still speculation that he might be replaced for the last half a dozen games just to try and save the club from relegation. Where would you be on that? What have you heard on that?
To be honest, I didn't hear about the bereavement, so that's and that put, you know, the fella must be they're a terrible position. But I didn't understand it. I don't understand any of it really. If Thomas Frank can't make it work, and then it just goes to show how hard it is. To do to it, all the money doesn't necessarily bring success. Football's a real tough business.
Yeah.
And the thought is, when you think of Spurs, that ground and all that American football
I know,
matches,
yeah, I know.
and it became, don't be. I mean, I was just thinking on the walk the other day, they weren't when they had all this change of pitches for the American foot. They weren't thinking about the championship then.
Yeah.
It just goes to show it can go wrong.
Well, if you're just joining us this week, we're delighted you're with us. Where were you last week when we started? But anyway, delighted that you're with us, and please stay with us going forward here on YouTube on the Betting Oracle with me, Jim Delahunt, and Harry Finlay. Last week we were talking about Hearts and the possibility of them breaking this Celtic Rangers, well, mostly Celtic in recent years, stranglehold on the Scottish Premiership title, and how important it was for them to get the win last week. They were at home to Dundee. They got the win. It wasn't spectacular, but it was vital, and they got the 3 points and kept their noses in front, Harry. And of course, Celtic managed to slip up.
Yeah, shocking. And Hearts weren't over impressive. I didn't watch the whole game, but they weren't over impressive, as you say. Late goal got the 3 points, crucial 3 points. Celtic were very bad again. Pitch was even worse though.
Pitch was poor, but poor for Dundee United as well.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. But you'd always prefer with a favourite to have a good pitch. But it's the market to me. Still, I want to be against Celtic really. But
yeah,
we were talking pre-show, Jim, about the last 5 games, and I think for English punters, it's probably decades since there's really been much betting on who's going to win the Scottish Premier.
Yeah.
This year it's certainly different. So perhaps you can tell us how it works now, because whenever you're looking at an anti-post bet, you've got to check the fixtures like I have with Spurs and see what they're going to get from every game. So how does it exactly work for those last 6 games?
Well, interestingly, Betfair are slightly out of kilter because they've got Rangers favourites roughly 6-4, Hearts at 17-10, Celtic 14-5. Now that's very interesting. Let me tell you why. Because when this Scottish Premiership does resume, the first match of the 3 teams in contention is Rangers versus Dundee United at Ibrox on the Saturday. And if they win that, Harry, they will go top on goal difference, which then puts the pressure onto Hearts, who play the next day, Sunday, away to Livingston. Now, that sounds like an easy fixture, but Livingston battling to try and get out of that relegation spot at the bottom. And Celtic, who've had a nightmare in the city of Dundee all season, they have to go to Dens this time to play Dundee. So it really is all to play for. And I'll come to those fixtures in a minute, but just so significant that Rangers, for the first time, if they beat Dundee United, even though Hearts will have that game in hand the next day, will go top.
Well, I wonder what price should have got when they sacked the manager of them.
Exactly.
Ever hitting the top, when they were just getting such a coating, just as we said, how it can change around.
Exactly.
And if they win that game, and there'll be big odds on to win it, they go top. It's amazing.
Just about that Hearts game, I mean, they weren't hugely impressive in beating Dundee, but interestingly, they got a couple of key players back and none more so than Lawrence Shankland, who came on as a substitute. And okay, they were 1-0 up at the time, but he did try to lob the goalkeeper from his own half. So he looks as if he's got something about him, and he's going to be a real big asset for them going forward.
Well, as we spoke a couple of weeks ago, the reason I wasn't back in Hearts was because of the injuries. And if they have got them all back and at those prices, I want to have a little bit on Hearts now.
Yeah. Well,
I can't be moaning at the end of the season. I'm busting to have a little bit on them really, but I'm waiting to find out how how it affects them.
Harry's alluded to this. In Scotland, what happens is after 33 games, the league splits into top 6, bottom 6, which means for those last 5 fixtures, those top 6 teams are only playing other sides in the top 6. So they play 5 games, they play against the other 5. So much is going to depend on the way the fixtures fall, the way the computer brings them out. We shall see. Traditionally, Harry, just the Old Firm game, because it's usually between Rangers and Celtic going into this last 5 matches, traditionally they try to get the Old Firm game away early, so that there's no possible trouble at the end and it's not a decider. So it'll be interesting to see. I think April the 13th, the fixtures will come out. Interesting to see whether they get that Old Firm game away early as normal, or whether they leave it as a possibility of one of those clubs winning or losing the title at the end. We just don't know.
Yeah.
We just don't know.
And were you telling me you're telling me you heard some rumours it might be a bit later?
Yeah.
But what I want to know is how do they decide who gets drawn at home? Say for the big three, who plays?
Well,
is that done by a computer?
Yeah. When it comes to Celtic Rangers, it would be if there's been two at Ibrox and one at Celtic Park,
right.
then the last one will be at Celtic Park. But there's sometimes a little anomaly.
Right.
I don't think there's going to be too much of an anomaly this season. I think whatever the Hearts-Hibs game is left, I think that'll be fine. That'll be fine. That'll balance out 2 home, 2 away for each of them. So that'll be fine. But it does throw up that possibility that somebody might play one club 3 times at home or 3 times away. But hopefully this year it'll all be nice. But again,
hopefully,
again, it depends how those fixtures come out, and people are going to be studying those fixtures, and it may have a massive bearing on who's playing who on that last day. I think May the 16th.
It'll have a massive bearing on the prices to it. I think you'll find that being the case. I think there'll be a lot more interest in the market once they have come out, and once everyone knows who's got to play each other, because that's the fundament of what you're trying to do to work out the winner.
And unlike those Six Nations fixtures a couple of weeks ago, where they were all staggered and one nation knew what the other nation had to do and all the rest of it, these last games on the last Saturday, I think it's May the 16th, they all kick off at 12:30.
Yeah.
So you'll have an ear on how the other clubs are getting on, but everybody's playing at the same time. So at least it's fair in that sense, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it is. That's all the leagues I think do that. I think
it's got to be, hasn't it, for integrity purposes?
Yeah, I think in Spain last year they did the last 2 sets of fixtures all at the same time.
And of course, this weekend, various clubs, various nations. Trying to fill these final positions in the World Cup across the pond. Some of those semi-finals will have been played by the time you're actually watching us, so we won't bother with those. There's various friendlies this weekend, and of course, nations like Scotland and England using these friendly matches, Harry, to get absolutely a final idea for the coaches as to what their starting 11s might be like. But both Tuchel and Clark, England and Scotland, they've both said there will be places up for grabs, but I think most of the players, they'll have a really good idea as to who they're taking with them to America.
Yeah, now, I'll be swerving them from a punting point of view, and I've found out in the World Cups themselves over the years for certain that they have that teams have pre-World Cup games, warm-up games, and that, and for the last 3 or 4 World Cups, any semblance of form from those has been absolutely worthless. So I won't be taking much notice of it, many of the friendly matches.
You tempted anybody anti-post at the moment, or too early?
No, I'm on Spain at a big price, but only very small.
Right.
At 9s, I always tend to bet Spain when they were flying in the under-21s or whatever it was a couple of years ago.
Well, that's pretty good when they're 9-2 now, isn't it?
Yeah, but it was, they were 9-1, I think, but for a very small bet. But I can't believe how short they are actually now, because I don't think there's not a lot of difference when, but no, it won't be a big anti-post. I do tend to have a bit of previous for betting real big prices, South American clubs each way and that, but this is a whole new system this year, so we'll have to see how it plays out. These extra, I'm not in favour of these extra teams. I think there was quite enough or just enough previously, but
it's going to be pretty difficult not to get through to the knockout round, isn't it?
I think
so many. They play these group matches, and I think 3/4 of them go through, don't they?
Yeah, no, I think Infantino should be locked up. So
that's a whole other story,
and not just because of the World Cup either, just for being who he is.
That's a whole other story. But the other big story in sport this week was, of course, the saving for the nation, for the world, of the Crucible in Sheffield as the venue for the World Championship. Seems to have been universally applauded when this news came out, and I presume, Harry, as a big snooker man, big snooker punter, you'd have been delighted as well.
Yeah, it's impossible now to snooker to punt on it. It's so wide open. I don't think there's anyone that does, but no, I still get the Crucible nearly every year, and I'll be popping in again this year. It's such an addictive place. I knew it'd stay at the Crucible because it's Barry Earn in charge, and Barry Earn had his big fella thanks moment, as I call it, the big fella thanks moment, when Steve Davis won in 81. I was absolutely potless. My case little bit of Reddy's on as a teenager, but And what Steve Davis done, and the years afterwards, the Crucible, it changed my life really, and lived there for 30 years. Used to go to every single. Well, there's so many people that used to have the block pass to sit and watch every session.
Yeah.
I think what I enjoyed the most is the 10 o'clock in the morning sessions. There's not much to punt on at 10 in the morning. And going into the Crucible for a real good. Sometimes you had the real top players at 10 in the morning playing like the third session of a second round match or something, and it was just going in. You just felt it was the only place in the world that you wanted to be, unless you could watch it on the telly, and to be in there. I think it's great, and I think it's great for snooker. I think that only the Greyhound Derby is a sport that has one race so far removed from all the other competitions within the sport, but snooker's probably not far away.
So what you're saying is that World Championship is on a different level. Well, of course it's a World Championship.
I mean, you had
a different level from everything else, all these ranking tournaments and everything.
Yeah, and in the old days, you had the Masters at Wembley, which was a fantastic atmosphere, all the faces.
Yeah.
Snooker was so big for gamblers. Everyone used to have, you could literally turn up at, like I say, the Masters, Wembley Conference Centre on a Monday night, and Jimmy White would be playing Mike Elliott or someone, and you could have, there'd be all private layers, and there'd be a betting shop there, and you could have what you like. There'd be a trading price, 4 to 5, 5 to 4, and that was.
And you would know that some of those players were so far ahead of their rivals that they had to be back.
Oh no! When you were at the Masters at Wembley, they're the top 16 players, and there was no Napos there, but it was like the stock exchange, really. So you weren't often having big bets in the Masters. But back to the Crucible, that even more so. The Crucible matches, there was such a everyone when we used to have a snooker hacker.
Yeah.
And I might give my old mate Phil Yates a ring. We did the snooker together for nearly 20 years, pricing up a card and going in the middle, the two of us. And he's still commentating on it now. Great sports journalist and commentator. And no, Barry Erman's never going to let that go. He's hard as nails around a pound note. And times 10. plenty of stories there. But see business, he gets it done. And what's he got? An extra 500 seats at the Crucible, an extra £45 million. And as he said, he can watch snooker at the rest of his life from the Crucible, and he'll be delighted with that. We all have, we'll have John Egan's is a good pal, and he's a legend. So we might get him in the studio before or after Sheffield. And what a great professional he is, John. And I met him at Motherwell, and so many great snooker stories. And I love it. Great it's staying at the Crucible.
And they were never really going to move it to Saudi, were they?
No. Well, that would. No, it's bad enough they do. It's bad enough they have the boxing there, but no, it would have been. They can have the whatever championships there, but no, if the World Championships had gone there, it would have been a terrible day for snooker. But as I say, I made that a very big price.
Yeah, I've not done much snooker in my career, but I was telling Harry before we come on here that I was commentating once on the Masters qualifying, which was down at Prestatyn in Wales. And as I was commentating, I had a Chinese lady just behind me who was translating every word I said for the Chinese market. It was quite a surreal experience. But we're going to move on this week to Rugby League in Australia. This is one of Harry's big specialities, and you've already watched Rugby League this weekend, Harry, and you're looking forward to quite a few games this weekend coming.
Yes, indeed. No, we just watched the. You just had a shiver down my spine there talking about Prestatyn. That's where I got the biggest break in my life when all the Scousers and we were laying, like say, betting on the snooker. I've got to tell this story because you mentioned Prestatyn.
Yeah, go on,
It's closed. It must have closed down not long after you, but after the World Championships, everyone goes to Prestatyn, and the amateurs take on the pros. And they were talking about this. This is how I become good pals with him and ended up backing him all the time. But John Parrott.
Yeah.
And John Parrott was 14, and he was a big price, and we laid him, and we had a book, and someone had bet him, and he was playing on the cloth tables up at the top. They have the tables at the top that all the holidaymakers use, and the papers is so thin. And then if he wins his first 4 matches, then he has to come down and play a pro on a real top table. Anyway, by the time he got down to play the pro, he was like 3-1 favourite, and I was in bits. And Parrott won the first frame, and I was at the bar all over the place. And then Willie Thorne, bless him, he's dead now. And what a character he was. He reeled off 4 frames in about 45 minutes, and I've never been so relieved in my life. And and Prestatyn was, you mentioned it, and it's the place where all the snooker stars. You see them all. That's where you used to go and get all the form for the the players coming through for the following years.
Yeah.
And that was a great snooker venue. And people used to literally get the train from Sheffield down to Wales straight afterwards, because it used to be the week after, but of course now it's all gone.
I was going to move on. I am going to get to that rugby league, but just since you started mentioning that, has the value gone in snooker betting, or is there still value to be found?
Oh, I think it's impossible.
Right.
I mean, every year we used to do snooker accumulators, but you had the old players, the 50-year-old players in the first round. And you know, whereas nowadays it's just so hard. I literally don't know anyone. Nigel still has a bet on it, but he hardly bets a winner. And there's another guy who does a snooker bet. He's so tough.
Yeah.
And of course, you've got all these young Chinese players coming through,
Of course.
who are mustard, and sometimes you forget whose names they are. But
Difficult.
the guy who won the final last year done me a favour, as it happens. No, it's very hard, and that's why another reason why the Crucible is so special, because all that really is a real proper betting event.
Yeah. Let's talk about the rugby league in Australia, because you've watched the Roosters this morning already, Thursday morning. How did that go?
Yeah, they won quite easy in the end. They were 10-8 down at half time, but they were the better team. I did bet them tiny at half time, so I got a little tiny bit. And but everyone's surprised just how well the handicappers have got it. You know,
Yeah.
I see they price up too. You know, they're obviously very similar to the tab. You know, as I predicted, it's going to be a real big betting business this week, and I think the prices reflect that. I think the odds compilers are. No one can believe how bang on they're getting them in advance. And I've had a tiny treble match odds this week on three skinny teams. The Warriors, who were flying, and but they're playing the Tigers, who were unlucky against the Rabbitohs last week.
Yeah. But
they got the best player out, Louis out, and so I've stuck them in the treble with the Bulldogs and the Panthers, which pays about 5 to 6, just a small win odds treble. I very rarely play the win odds, but it's hard to find a bet on the handicap.
Yeah.
Although I've had a small bet on the Cowboys plus 14.5 against Melbourne Storm. I don't think Melbourne Storm looked that good against Brisbane last week, even in the first half when they led 14-0. And that evening match in North Queensland, that's a real different atmosphere, but the temperature and the how it feels. It's a real different tough night, and to win by more than 14, they'd have to do really well. So I've had a small bet on the Cowboys plus 14.5.
Well, that's Harry's handicap bet on the NRL, and just to confirm his short price treble, which we think pays round about 5 to 6. That's the Panthers, the Bulldogs, and the Warriors. And before we go this week, Harry, we want to just mention the cycling last weekend in Italy.
I was just about to say it doesn't matter if they all win. if they all win, I'll get less than half of what I lost on the cycling last week. I thought it was going well early on, and he didn't look totally comfortable, Van der Poel, but when the three of them broke away, I pressed up, I'm afraid, and I pressed up at 10 to 11 when the three of them went clear, and then when Van der Poel cracked and it was just the two, I did have a little stab at Pog. So when Pog just won by half a wheel, it was bad enough, but if he'd have got beat, it would have been a catastrophe. I didn't fancy Pidcock in the sprint, but maybe Pog was knackered after. Effectively, he crashed and come. What Pog done this week is freakish, and but I knew how much he wanted to win these two races.
Yeah.
And he said afterwards he's never going to go there again. He's only going to go there and eat pasta and pizzas and but this next one, I think he wants it even more. He finished second last year, and you come into a velodrome at the end, Paris-Roubaix, and you come into the old-fashioned velodrome, and he was well beat by Van der Poel, and I actually think he was nearly in tears. And I've never seen anyone ever in sport be so happy to finish second. And if he wins there this year, then he's won every single race. And although I might not back him, well, I might now. You never know. But everything would be. On paper, it's the race that Pog should find toughest to win. But I wouldn't put it past him winning the World Championship at Sheffield at snooker.
Oh, well,
after what he done last week.
We are going to keep tabs on the cycling, of course, as the weeks goes on. We will keep tabs on all the major sports betting stories that are happening all around the world here on this programme. But for this week, from Harry and me, I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you join us next week as well. Remember, all these big races coming up in horse racing over the next couple of weeks. We've got the Irish Grand National coming up next weekend, Easter weekend, of course. We'll have Gary O'Brien talking about that, Irish racing expert. And then the following week, it's the Aintree Grand National. We'll have plenty on that. That's Masters weekend in the golf as well. We may have a special programme on that too. But Davy Russell, Grand National winning jockey, will be with us in the studio to look ahead to Aintree. We've loved having you with us this week. Thank you very much indeed for watching. From Harry and me, see you next week.